Good evening. With it being 6:36 p.m., I first apologize for running a little late. I would like to call to order the Francis House School Board of Education meeting. We're going to begin this evening, and if you will please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Ling, seconded by Mrs. Walker. We have a first and a second motion. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next on our agenda this evening, we have our recognition segment. I'm turning that over to Mr. Dykeman.
Thank you, Mrs. Cope. Last year, Independence Elementary first grade teacher Rachel Wilcox was selected as the District Teacher of the Year, and this year, DESE selected her as a Regional Teacher of the Year and then a Teacher of the Year finalist. Only 7 educators from across the state of Missouri achieved that distinction this year. Rachel has taught at Independence for the past 11 years. Her passion for education and building relationships with students is evident to those who have seen her in action. She says that every relationship with her students will stand the test of time because the very nature of positive relationships extends beyond the school year and has a lasting impact on the heart. Independence Principal Emily Pavia says her use of innovative instructional strategies and forging meaningful relationships with students and families demonstrates her commitment to the success of every student in her classroom. Ladies and gentlemen, Missouri Teacher of the Year finalist, Rachel Wilcox.
Because we don't have the pictures of your family.
Yeah, but my whole family works for the district. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
You can take a picture, you can be in the picture, whatever works for you guys.
Thank you very much.
We're gonna have to squish him a lot.
Right.
I know you know.
Front row, this way. This way. There you go. I'm like, can you come to the other side?
Oh, yeah, put the skinny one down.
The U.S. Department of Education has recognized Becky David, Daniel Boone, and Warren Elementary as National Blue Ribbon Schools for 2019. The 3 Francis Howell Elementary Schools received the award based on their exemplary high academic performance. Only 5 other elementary schools in Missouri received the award this year. Earlier this month, building representatives traveled to Washington, D.C. to receive this prestigious national honor. With us this evening are the principals and building representatives from those 3 schools to share with us what makes them a Blue Ribbon School. First up, Becky David Elementary.
Good evening. What an honor. At Becky David, I think we most pride ourselves on building those positive relationships with our students and families. Our teachers work so hard to provide great instruction, interventions, extensions, and any type of emotional and social support that our students might need. And working all together with our community makes Becky David one great school. Thank you.
we do the certificate and we'll because when we get up, we're going to on the 12th.
Goes right in.
Sounds good.
Ooh, I didn't see that.
They had you scoot down to the front.
No fingerprints on the hardware, Jane.
That is very. I didn't touch it.
Let me have you guys scoot down, Mary, you're good. One more. Thank you.
Now our representatives from Daniel Boone Elementary.
Just very honored as well to receive this special recognition. I think when we think about our school at Daniel Boone, such a family and such a community, and such a great celebration for all the hard work that our staff puts in. So always had that strive, that ambition to do better, to meet the kids' needs, and all that hard work and to be recognized with something so special was such a great celebration for all of our staff. We always think of us wrapping our arms around our kids, and it starts when they get picked up at the bus stop, and just all the people throughout our school day that touch the lives of the kids. So, and also just as Mr. Dykeman was saying, a celebration for our district to have 3 schools. I looked, National Blue Ribbon School started in 1982, and this is only the 2nd time that 3 schools in one district have been nominated in 1 year. So just a big credit to the district and the supports, and I know Mary was our Chief Academic Officer, now Superintendent of Schools, to leave on such a high note with 3 of our schools is just incredible, and just ask that the board and our cabinet and our district just continuing with their investment in our kids and in our staff. We are not an average district. We never have been, and we've never strived to be that way, and just to achieve at such a high level is just a celebration for the entire Frankstown School District, so thank you.
Do you want to use somebody else's? Because I'm not sure. Yeah, don't zoom in.
You'll be able to read it in the picture.
Place your fingers.
We already displayed it proudly. We just don't put your
We had you guys in the front row, scoot this way. Scoot this way. There you go.
And finally, Warren Elementary School.
Thank you. I would just like to say congratulations to the other 2 schools who shared this honor with me. I would like to say that I am sure that we are going to be the first 3 of many Francis Howell schools to follow that will be receiving this honor in the future. I want to thank the executive cabinet for all of your support with the school, with me, and particularly as the building principal for the past 13 years. But we like to say that excellence is no accident, and it is because of our great staff of warm, caring, dedicated teachers, our parent partnerships, innovative teaching and learning that makes Warren a great place to learn and grow. And I would especially like to thank Dr. Garland for her continued support. It was great having her along with us in Washington, D.C. She gets us, and that's saying something about the elementary folks. So thank you, everybody.
We'll do a word picture and then we're going to do the 3 principals together.
Members will be 3 flags.
So now we can just have lead principals up.
lead principals?
The 4 principals.
Four?
We get 2 from Becky David.
Preschools, I was
Preschools, 4 principals.
You're welcome.
Never mind the money.
You can reach.
I always know where my spot is.
All right. Thank you.
And now to introduce our student board representative is Bryan Middle School Principal, Dr. Suzanne Leek.
Good evening. It is my honor tonight to introduce to you Bridget Reichart. Bridget is here with her family this evening, Mother Maureen and Father John, also her sister Kiera. Bridget has spent her entire educational career in the Francis House School District. She started in elementary school at Independence Elementary, and before we know it, she will be transitioning to become a Viking at Francis Howell High School. Bridget's able to balance a demanding, competitive Irish dance schedule along with her successful, extremely rigorous course schedule. So you will see tonight that she has a contagious smile and she is extremely positive. When I asked her teachers, and her former teachers, this included as well, to let me know how she contributes in the classroom, my inbox was flooded with responses. That's not typical when I request something. They were eager to share with me what a positive role model Bridget is. And literally every person used the word positive when they described Bridget. They said she sprinkles kindness everywhere that she goes. She's always willing to give more than what's expected. I got screenshots of some of her student work because she is so thorough and comprehensive and so impressive to the teachers. She also has a creative side that elevates her performance in the classroom. One of her teachers spoke about her unique competitive nature, how she's always willing to strive to be the very best, but not at the expense of somebody else not being as good. So Bridget gives nothing short of her best every single day. She advocates for herself, she demonstrates great organizational skills, and she is always prepared for class. She has an influence on those around her that she may never realize. She's very impactful and kind, and we are extremely proud to have her in the Patriot family. This past week, Bridget attended MOYAG, which is Missouri Youth in Government, with 19 other students. They gave out 18 awards to the districts from around the state that attended, 9 of which were given to Bryan's students, and Bridget collected 2 of those awards. So Bridget was recognized for Outstanding Bill and Outstanding Statesman. Bridget Reichart.
Out with your family and we're so happy to have a big fest tonight. We're so happy to have you in the district. Go ahead.
Okay, trust me, you're gonna have to follow it.
Hang on. Thank you.
Hi Bridget, thanks for joining us this evening. So here's the fun part about tonight. You get to participate in our conversations. So as we talk through topics, if you have comments or suggestions or information from a student point of view, we really do want to hear that. Here's the not fun part. You don't get to vote. All right. So Mr. Hain is sitting next to you, and he's going to help you tonight. If you have any questions, certainly reach out and ask, okay? Do you have anything to say as we get started?
No.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Not yet.
All right, thanks for joining us. All right, next on our agenda is patron comments. FHEA, FISPA,
Good evening, board members, cabinet, community members. FISPA would like to share a concern that we have with the 2021 calendar. The calendar has students going to school on Good Friday, which is a paid holiday per policy 4330. When this was brought forward at the calendar committee, it was said that they were sure FISPA would work with us. The results of the calendar survey for staff showed 14 of the 30 comments regarding Good Friday showed that they still wanted Good Friday as a holiday, even though this question was only asking about spring break. FISPA believes many community and staff members did not even realize there would be school on Good Friday since that was not addressed in the survey. We would like to see another date selected for Francis Hall to have school and abide by the policy that states Good Friday is a paid holiday. FISPA suggests making either September 25th or February 12th a school day and moving the PD day to April 5th and keeping Good Friday as the paid holiday. There's also concern for staff and student attendance on Good Friday since parents are used to that being a holiday. Thank you.
great, thank you. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Lang. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed? Motion carries. All right, next on our agenda is our academic high target. And I'm turning that over this evening to Dr. Hovind.
We are pleased tonight to have Katie Vargas here to speak with us. She's been doing some fantastic work since we brought her on board last year, and it's just exciting to have her here to highlight some of that work.
Thank you, Dr. Hovind. And thank you all for allowing me some time to speak tonight. And I'm honored and privileged to be serving the amazing families and students in our community alongside each and every one of you. So just to give you an update of the, in my opinion, very important work on the college career readiness side of our students' learning, I wanted to just highlight a few best practices we are currently working on at each level of our district, as well as where we are headed and our hopes with all of the awesome strategic goal work that we are currently undergoing. The premise of being future ready and really highlighting college career readiness is pretty simple. If we can get our students engaged, they are going to achieve academically, and when they achieve academically, they are going to be ready and successful for life after high school in any area or path that they choose. So just a little bit of talk on life readiness and some of the diligent work we are currently pursuing. We, as a district, it came about that a lot of our faculty members are saying, hey, we really want to start embedding content, particularly at the secondary level, but at elementary as well. We want to start embedding content for work readiness, and we don't know what that looks like in the 21st century because we are so busy serving our students in our classrooms. So how do we do that? And it was with the thoughtful development of some members of the academic team that we decided to provide an externship experience for some of our faculty members this year. So we have 35 or more externship opportunities lined up for this school year for 17 of our educators, and I'd love to see that program grow next year as a professional development training opportunity. We also are working diligently in putting our footprint in the greater St. Charles County area, and by doing that, we are serving on staff task forces like soft skills and manufacturing task forces. So we are able to sit at the table with industry partners in our community and really collaborate together on how we, again, can prepare our students for the future. Additionally, we have students working on aptitude and strengths finders. We find that, again, that student engagement happens when we can align interests and strengths. And we are working harder at developing opportunities for every single one of our students to participate in at least one aptitude, strengths, interest finder. And that is dependent on the path that they're interested in pursuing. So some examples would include youth science through our SCORE College Career Readiness platform, ASVAB, WorkKeys, etc. And then of course there's this constant continued conversation through our strategic goal number 2 planning on social emotional learning. And that is embedded and aligned with those 21st century skills, those soft skills, those buzzwords that you're hearing. So how are we doing a better job of implementing and integrating those into our daily classrooms, K-12, so that our students can enter their workforce and enter into college campuses with better communication skills, better problem solving, critical thinking, resiliency, etc. Just highlight some college readiness work that we are working on and achieving. We currently have 1,200. We had 1,200 plus students in our district participate in our first ever district-wide college fair, and we hope to pursue that again next year. That's in the works. We had 100 plus universities and military institutions available for our junior class. Every single junior that was present at every single high school participated in this day, and they had these amazing institutions at their disposal for approximately an hour, hour and a half to connect with and start planning for their futures. We also are partnering with this fantastic organization called Mentors for College, and it's slow, it's a steady growth, but it's good work. And the whole premise of this program is to connect students with a mentor in the community to help come alongside them and help them plan for college. So great work for a lot of our first generation students. We do SCORE, again, is our platform that we're continuing to grow in. We are invested in planning college campus visit tours for students who may not have the ability to go and visit college campuses in our region and in our state with their family, with their parents. And we are currently modeling the college career counselor model, where we have one counselor dedicated to solely college and career development in 2 of our 3 high schools. In addition, I want to just note that we are working actively in sending out the message to the district, and when I say we, I say primarily my colleagues. We're doing the college career readiness work, our college counselors in the buildings, to send the message out to our community that all of our evening programs, our FAFSA Frenzies, our financial aid nights, are available to all of our community members. It does not matter which campus these events are being held at. We welcome everybody everywhere. And so we're hoping to expand variety in attendance by sending that message. Just some notes on career readiness. I feel at best practice, for career readiness, we need experiential learning at the hands of our students. And we are achieving that through career shadowing opportunities. Since January of this year, we've had 200 plus students attend at minimum 2 hours, sometimes half day, sometimes full day experiences with industry professionals in the areas that align with what they want to pursue after high school. We are continuing the good work of partnering with our St. Charles County CAPS, Project Lead the Way, Lewis and Clark Tech, and are also doing the work of collaborating with local districts and figuring out how they are executing their best practices to bring industry recognized credentials into their CTE programs. We are also really focused on bringing students to experiences that might work outside of job shadowing. So any type of field trip
or forum that might align with a specific content area, we're doing that great work too, and we continue and hope to expand that. There is a list on the slide of just a few of the field trips that we've been able to take. And then moving ahead into March of this year, we'll have our first ever regional post-secondary career fair. And this is specifically designed for students who are graduating, for our high school seniors who are graduating very quickly in May and are looking to enter the workforce immediately upon graduation and want to skill up, want to earn a place in an employer or place of employment that pays them a decent salary and offers benefits. And so the vendors that will be participating in that fair will have jobs ready for those students. Additionally, Fort Zumwalt School District hosted this regional fair last year. It's our turn this year, and we're hoping to move it to another district in subsequent years, but we decided that we would add the opportunity for our displaced parents in our region and our community to also come to this fair with resumes. That was some feedback we received last year at the Zumwalt Fair. So that'll take place March 5th at Francis Howell North in the Commons area. So looking ahead, we are diligently working with aligning our college career readiness curriculum and programming. And when I say alignment, alignment to our state standards, and then also scope and sequence, aligning our elementary to our middle to our high, and then also creating some consistency and equity among the buildings at each level. So I'm working with some amazing counselors across the district to get that work accomplished and create more of a timeline, an established program per se, to make sure that regardless of where your child attends school in the district, they're receiving excellent college career readiness programming. We are also working again diligently with Dr. Kara Dalton and our CTE teachers to bring dual credit and IRC opportunities to the table. And I will say that one of the things I love most about this role and that I have the privilege of doing is collaborating with other districts. There's just such a, St. Charles County is so unique and so great for that reason. Educators are coming together, coming to the table, I feel like for the first time in a long time, and saying we want what's best for kids in general in St. Charles County. We want kids that are successful and work ready, and we want them to stay in our county. So let's do all that great work together, which is why we're able to do the regional post-secondary fair, and why we're also planning, again, with help with Jen Henry and the communications department, and creating a trades fair opportunity, a regional one. Actually, we're dreaming big, tri-county. We would love Lincoln County, Warren County, and St. Charles County to come together to plan an epic trades fair, and also to educate our parents on the work to educate parents on the lucrative path that the trades can provide. So we do feel like there needs to be some destigmatization work there. We're doing college readiness fantastically, and we're pushing to align career readiness with the efforts that we have with college right now. And public speaking is like right underneath snakes and like right above death for me. So I thank you for your time and for listening to me. Do you have any questions for me?
So I want to thank you. You've done an excellent job, even though it's such a fear. You've done great. One of the questions that came to mind for me is you mentioned 35 externships.
Yes.
So I think it's very important that our staff stays connected to a variety of fields. Can you give a couple examples of what some of those experiences?
Yes, so one of the caveats of being part of the externship was that there was a partner, a content partner to participate. And the reason behind that is we wanted our faculty members to go on their externships, both this, I'll get to where they went in a minute here, but to go on their externships this past PD Day, their PD Day in February, and then come back in April and collaborate with each other. So they're not in a silo, so they can say, what did you learn at your externship? What did you learn at yours? how can we embed that into our daily instruction within our curriculum? So for example, our math teachers, we had a trio. They went to McCarthy Construction, and they were able to spend half a day with 2 individuals there. One was on the accounting business side of McCarthy Construction. So they were able to discuss with her what her role and how mathematics plays a role in her daily work there. And then the other half of the experience was with an HR talent recruiter. So he was able to speak to, when he goes out in the field and he's recruiting people from McCarthy, from construction to executive office people, what skills, both 21st century related and math skills, that he's looking for. To give you another short example, we had a language arts teacher, Shadow. She was able to interview a publisher on the phone, just had a phone conference. She was based in Arizona, but her publishing company is based locally here in St. Louis. So I was able to connect them, and then she spent the other part of the day at Colby Co., which is a local media brand company. And she was able to pick both their brains on what language art skills she could be really stressing that align with work readiness in those fields, along, again, with the 21st century skill set.
Very nice. Board, do you have any other questions? Mr. Lane?
I've attended your last 2, I don't know about you, but career days. And have you thought about inviting the school districts like Francis Howe, as they're looking to go into the job world? We're looking for people to come into the school districts, and that's just a recommendation, and not just Francis Howe, but for Zumwalt, because we're always hiring those support staff type positions at least. And so maybe a suggestion that those kids can get right off back to their district and work for the district.
I love that suggestion. Thank you.
Do you hear that, Susie?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.
Right.
All right, board, next on our agenda is the MSBA board report. Potentially.
No.
So much for that thought process.
Okay, how about if we move to the next agenda item and we'll come back? We'll give you a minute. All right, next on our agenda is fiscal responsibility. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the request for purchases over $7,500 as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carries. Say A. All right. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the October 2019 financial report as presented. Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. How about all of those in favor say aye? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the revised 2019-2020 budget as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. Mr. Supple.
Thank you, Mrs. Cope. This information was included in the memo that accompanies the revised budget, but I just wanted to have a moment to talk about it here at the meeting. So we shared with the board earlier this year, this calendar year, that due to accounting requirements, we transferred some money from the general fund to the capital fund in order to facilitate the purchase of the buses, and that money would be reimbursed. So we're accounting for that now in the revised budget. So it appears that there's this significant turnaround in our underlying financial position, which really isn't the case. We're replenishing the general fund for funds that were used at the very end of last fiscal year in order to facilitate the bus purchases. So if we take a look at the other things that are really driving the budget, there have been some minor adjustments to personnel costs and some minor adjustments in various revenue areas. Overall, our position is not significantly different than it was when we adopted the budget. So the good news is things haven't changed a lot. The bad news is we're still projecting at this point a deficit budget. But as I've shared with the board previously, by the time we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, the sands will have shifted much more through the hourglass. And we typically see the type of turnaround between revenues a little bit better than we expected, expenses a little less, that I anticipate will be very close to having a balanced budget for the year. I just don't want anybody to think that we suddenly have a lot of money that just turned up out of nowhere. It's that just reversing the accounting maneuver that was necessary in order to facilitate the purchase of the buses.
Thank you, Mr. Supple. Board, any questions? All of those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We'll finish with fiscal responsibility and then we'll move back to the MSBA report. So last in the area of fiscal responsibility, board, I'll entertain a motion, so bear with me. The bond resolution authorizing the refunding of the district's one taxable general obligations bond, Series 2010B, maturing in the years 2021 and thereafter, outstanding in the aggregate principal amount of $27,250,000. 2, general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2011, maturing in the years 2021, and therefore outstanding the aggregate principal amount of $6,800,000. And 3, general obligation refund bonds, Series 2012A, maturing in the years 2024, outstanding in the aggregate principal amount of $1,680,000. Motion made by Mrs. Walker, second by Mr. Lang. Mr. Supple.
Yes, I have some great news to share with the board tonight. So we were very fortunate to get into the bond market today at what is probably a pretty much optimal time. So we had anticipated that this refunding would save the district about $2.8 million. We had just over $32 million of general obligation bonds, and we had orders this morning, meaning people wanting to buy bonds, of over $74 million. So we were way oversubscribed, which means we were able to lower the interest rates on the bonds because greater demand, and we get to lower the interest rate that we pay. So we were able to reduce the interest rates by 6 to 15 basis points over the various maturities. That netted us an additional $400,000 in savings on this refunding. So kudos to the underwriters at Stifel who worked for us today. They were very aggressive in placing our issue on the market. And we're very, at the pre-pricing call this morning, they were very optimistic about being able to get us over that $3 million mark, and they cleared that by a couple $100,000 more than that. We had a lot of great, and it wasn't just oversubscription, but a lot of great interest from some big players in the bond market for our particular issue. And I think that's attributable to, we have a good rating from Standard & Poor's. They have indicated that this is a great community that does a good job of managing its resources. I do think that helped with the oversubscription. And we, again, I just have to say, we were just, part of it is just timing. It was a perfect day to sell bonds. So I won't take any credit for that, but it's great to know that we're going over the next 10 years where these bonds would have matured. We're going to save the taxpayers of Francis Howell $3.2 million.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we'll return to the MSBA board report, please.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's board report for the month of November. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the issue of vaping among Missouri's youth. Governor Mike Parson has signed an executive order directing several state agencies, including the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, to develop a statewide campaign to educate, warn, and deter the use of vaping devices among young people in Missouri. School districts throughout the state and nation have been grappling with the issue in recent months. Some have even joined a lawsuit against electronic cigarette companies that target young people because of the health risks associated with vaping. The state supervisor for alcohol and tobacco control in the State Department of Public Safety, Dorothy Taylor, says her agency is committed to preventing illegal sales to minors.
ATC will continue to support local coalitions to address the vaping epidemic, as well as meet with and provide training material to help law enforcement agencies understand the statutes related to vaping and tobacco, as well as alcohol. In addition, ATC agents plan to meet with school resource officers to offer our assistance and resources regarding vape-related matters. We are committed to continuing all these efforts and to working on education efforts aimed at retailers who sell these products.
The name of the state campaign is Clear the Air, the Risk of Youth Vaping. MSBA and the Missouri PTA will be part of the effort to inform school board members, administrators, and parents about efforts to prevent young people from vaping. The State Board of Education has decided to accept new comments about the proposed 6th version of the Missouri School Improvement Program. MSIP began in 1990 and is the state's school accountability system for reviewing and accrediting public school districts in Missouri. Nearly 1,500 comments were submitted on MSIP 6 during the initial comment period in August, and resulted in several revisions to the standards and indicators being proposed in the new version. Commissioner of Education Margie Van Dieven says the philosophy behind the Missouri School Improvement Program has changed over the years.
In the early days where it was counting books and counting resources and counting seeds, and then it sort of progressed to maybe we should look at a little bit of the quality of that, and then it progressed to people saying, you know what, if our kids are achieving, why do you care how we do our business at the local level? We're a local control state. Let's just look at student output. So that's where we ended up in 4th, and in MSIP 5 where it became solely on performance. The pendulum is starting to swing back where people are saying it does matter how we do our business. It does matter about some of the inputs. So let's look at both, and that's where we're heading in MSIP 6. It is not yet resolved.
Van Dieven made her comments during a panel discussion at the recent MSBA annual conference. The new comment period for the MSIP 6 standards and indicators will run from December 16th through January 15th. You can submit your comments via the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's website. As you may know, state law now requires all school board members not only to receive training in their first year of service, but also 1 hour of refresher training for every subsequent year of board service. The training must include concepts covered in the initial training, plus the prevention of sexual abuse of children. There are 2 ways to comply with the new refresher requirements. A 3-hour in-person session will satisfy the requirement for 3 years if there's no break in service. A 1-hour online session will satisfy the requirement for 1 year. Visit the MSBA website for dates and locations for the in-person refresher training, as well as information on the online session. Filing for school board seats up for election in April opens on December 17th in most school districts in the state. MSBA will have free resources available to school board candidates posted on the MSBA website, including a candidate's guide to running for the school board and information on the roles and responsibilities of school boards. Filing for school board seats closes on January 21st. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
Great, thank you. So board, next on our agenda is strategic planning. We do have several policies up for review in the first reading, so please make sure that you are reviewing that information. All right, so Bridget, we are getting ready to move into our work session. And what that means is we're going to come down here and we're going to sit at the tables and we're going to have a good, robust discussion about several topics coming up. So one is about a bond issue that we're considering, a no tax increase bond issue. Another is about it's an academic workshop, and it's talking about some of our results. And then the third topic we're going to talk about this evening is our 2020-2021 school calendar. So you are welcome to join us, or you are welcome to end your time with us here this evening. It's up to you, whatever you decide. But prior to us moving down there, I wanted to ask if you have any comments, if you wanted to address anybody with administration or with the board.
I just wanted to thank Dr. Leek for having me here today, and thank you all for having me here. I have had such a positive experience here at the Francis Howell School District through Independence Elementary School and Bryan Middle School, and I've had such great teachers who really care about everybody's learning, and I really feel as though this is the best school district to be in, and thank you.
Thank you.
So Bridget, I think I hear that you're going to be a Viking next year. Great. So this year, what types of subject matter do you like to study? What's your favorite classes?
My favorite classes are probably ELA and history.
Really?
Yes.
Very nice. Very nice. Do you have any idea yet what you might want to do with that?
So I recently, like Dr. Leek said, I went to MOYEG last week, which is a Missouri Youth in Government in Jefferson City, and that got me really interested in going into politics or something of the sort. And so now I'm thinking about a career path in politics, because it really was interesting to me, and it kind of opened my eyes and to everything that's going on in politics, which I thought was interesting. So.
Excellent. So we are all elected officials. So as you start your career journey and you get advanced in your area, if you ever think about giving back to your community with your schools, we would love to have you do that in the future.
Thank you. Definitely.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll meet down and do our work session.
Probably.
I end up picking myself.
Actually, this is my hip is doing great. I just left, yeah.
So you still have it? The Kirkwood one. So they were like,
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
We're meeting, didn't we?
Thank you so much for having me.
Are you gonna take off?
Yes.
Okay, well, you are so welcome.
oh, of course. Do you need information?
Do you want a picture up there? Like,
What's your name? What time is it up here? And I'm gonna get you there.
Take a picture of it. You want to take a picture of yourself? Wait a minute.
Well, that's why I just told her she could take it, and then Michelle just send her. Did you have room? Yes.
We can open the table up if you need.
Oh, no.
Okay.
See, you can show what she can show. This I don't.
That's right here.
You're welcome. Do you want your water?
Susie says,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Thank you so much. I am. Yes, I know.
But he loved it.
He
was so excited. Maybe next year in Howard, you'll do it.
Yeah, Pam was
Awesome. Thank you. I will. I definitely will.
I think it was my second year over 16. She sent me a text yesterday, so we're going to try to get together right before Christmas, before she's gone for 6 months. I'm not fishing, but I just feel like I have something.
7.
I don't know, 6:30.
See what happens when you miss one board meeting? You get overrun.
stand up in like the beginning, middle of
What's the church today?
Here, I was worried about it.
Thank you. Since my favorite wrote one, you might want to take it.
No, it wasn't. $10 there.
Because I'm like, my husband, you're studying. I didn't want to be a country. No, you have it. So I don't want to ask her. I'm fine with that. Very comfortable. Okay, you can. You know what, I'll buy a box to replace it.
You'll buy a whole box?
I I'll tell her you say hi.
Ready to reconvene?
No, she actually made it. I'm either going to have to.
Do what? Yeah, we're doing all three of them. We're doing calendar, academics, and bondage. No, there's nothing to vote on.
All right, if we can reconvene.
What?
We're talking about the bonds first again.
I'm pretty sure I need a new iPad. A key component.
Yeah, you broke it.
It's only 4 years old. 4.5 years old.
Mine's 4 years old and it looks as good as new.
You don't have 3 kids at home that like to use it.
All right, for our work session this evening, our first topic is the bond issue. Mr. Supple, is that over to you? I got it.
Thanks, Mrs. Cope. Just as we're getting started, we've had a great opportunity to spend some time with the board in good, thoughtful conversation about a bond issue. So last night, many of our board members were able to attend an engagement meeting that we had with the community where we shared some information. I think our work tonight is to revisit maybe some of that information that we learned last night and shared last night, as well as some of the information from Thought Exchange, and hopefully move us a little closer to a final decision around timing and amount, so that we can begin to do some planning. I think Dr. Hendricks-Harris is ready to move. I'll turn it to her.
So I believe, as we've been having multiple conversations about the bond issue, that the way we left it in our last conversation was that the board wanted to gather more information and more input. And so since then, you've been a part of it. We've had a group of people that have been active in our community come in for a presentation. We've had the Thought Exchange, which Matt's going to go through here in a minute, provide some input. We did a survey of those stakeholders that attended that meeting. Last night we had the informational meeting, which was more about answering questions than it was about input, but it was also important for us to see the reaction of those involved. So our goal tonight is to present you with the information. There also has been some conversation that we would like to bring it for a vote in December, knowing that you have many things on the agenda starting in January. It could not be any later than January. So I think you have seen the survey information from that stakeholder group prior to this. You saw the presentation that we did last night. I'm going to have Matt talk you through the Thought Exchange summary report and the information available there. I'm going to share a couple of the things, and then I think we just open it up for discussion. Is the board willing to give us direction to bring back a vote next month?
So our initial thought exchange asked district stakeholders to respond to a single question. Knowing that the local tax rate would remain the same, what are some perspectives Francis Howell needs to consider in planning for a possible $240 million bond issue in the future? For the first time with a new software platform, the turnout was very good. We had over 850 people participate in the survey. Normally when we do a survey, people self-identify in the demographics section about 4 or 5% of the time as community members. And we know that that's a demographic that we have a challenge reaching. So we did some paid advertising, and actually about 15% of respondents identify themselves as community members, so we were able to cast a little broader net in that regard. 654 thoughts and over 27,000 ratings during the 3 weeks of the survey. The summary report is on the district website, of course. We love to be transparent and share the information with our stakeholders. Here's an example of it, of what our patrons can see. You can drill down into the top thoughts. It's nice, this is a very interactive report. You can see all of the thoughts and their ratings. So we've had some questions around how are the thoughts rated and what rises a thought to the top. So Thought Exchange uses an algorithm that is both qualitative and quantitative. So it's not just the number of 4-star ratings, it's also the number of ratings overall. We also have the chance, and you can see a couple of those up there, links, where I'm able to respond on the district's behalf when patrons ask things like, the district should post a list of the Phase 1 and Phase 2 projects. And we can put the link and say they're on the district website, and here's the link. So we've closed that thought exchange, and we appreciate the feedback from all of our patrons. And again, that report is on the district website. We have also started a second thought exchange, and it's one of the beauties of thought exchanges. We can do them back to back, or we can do multiple thought exchanges as we see fit. And the one now is around one of the most common themes in the first thought exchange, which is communication. So what can you do? Oh, we also have, this is still on the report, we also have Thought Exchange uses AI to generate the most common themes, and then if you want to, you can click on any one of those.
Oh, sorry.
You can click on any one of those bars and drill down into the thoughts in that particular category. And then if you back out, Vicki, go back, then you can also do the same thing at the very bottom. They do the same thing in theme tiles, so it's sort of a heat map that shows you some of the more popular themes. So again, we used one of the most common comments in the first thought exchange, which was around communication. How can we communicate with our stakeholders in perhaps new or different ways, or other ways that we haven't yet thought of. So that thought exchange is currently open. We launched that on Monday, and we're encouraging our patrons to respond to the second thought exchange now.
Does the board have any questions about the information we've gathered from Thought Exchange? It was overwhelmingly positive in regards to what we put out there. All right, so just a couple of other things that I would like to share with the board. One is, while we had a decent turnout last night, we also did a Facebook Live. We've had over 2,000 people view the video. No one has made a comment to this point, even live. I think Jen might have gotten a couple of questions live, but we did not get any positive or negative comments as a result of the informational meeting last night. The other thing that I want to share is I've had a conversation with Anita in regards to the teachers and their stance on moving forward with the bond issue, and they understand there's needs within the district and they're supportive of the bond issue, but they're not prepared to commit resources at this time. And so if you were here on that stakeholder night, it's pretty similar to what you might have heard that night, but after some conversation, that is where they're at with that. So I think we've gathered all the information that I know that we can gather for you at this point. And I think we just need to have a conversation about, are we ready for a vote next month, and the contents of the vote. Is that, will that be for the $240 million and in April? So I'll open it up to the board at this point.
Mrs. Walker.
So I want to make sure I understand. So the $240 million would be spread out approximately over about 10 years that we would get those bonds. 10 to 12. Issue. Okay. But that's when we start paying the interest, is once they're issued.
Yes.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear so that I don't contribute to any confusion. So yes, we would issue the bonds in various increments, probably over a period of about 10 years. So let's assume, for discussion purposes, the first issue is 2020 and the last is in 2030. But the bonds issued in 2030 would extend to 2050.
Right.
Okay, just the life of the bonds is dependent upon the date they're issued and they're typical.
So I guess my next question is, if we decide to do this in April, we've got a longer summer this summer, you'd mentioned that. What kind of projects do we think we would be able to accomplish before the kids go back to school?
I have somebody working right now on taking a look at the Phase 1 projects and mapping out a calendar. So some of the issues that would be resolved would be HVAC replacements, some of the rooftop units that need to be replaced. Summer is a perfect time to do that. If we are proactive and get specs written up ahead of time, which shouldn't be too difficult for some of the rooftop units, we can get those on order and then placed over the summer when there are opportunities for fewer people to be in the building. So typically those are placed by cranes, and so you want to make sure that you don't have people underneath while those are being placed on the roof. So that's one example of the type of work that we could do over the summer. And move very quickly, the time framework from approval, assuming approval in April, to turning dirt in June. You need to pick some things that are fairly easy to get bid, approved, ordered, delivered, installed. So I think that was a good example of something that we could reasonably accomplish. But in a short, we have a meeting on the calendar, but I don't think it's till early December when Dr. Hendricks Harris and I will review the schedule that's been put together, taking a look at Phase 1 projects and how we might map those out, understanding that we need to move very quickly with something during the summer of 2020.
Mr. Hayden?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, we've talked about this and talked about it and talked about it. I'm all for April and 244 for safety and more.
High five on that one.
He's giving that a lot of thought.
Okay.
Glad he has.
All right, so I'll pose a couple questions to the board that maybe jumpstart a little bit of the conversation. Is there any other community feedback opportunities that we feel we need? Do we feel that we're ready to put this on for a vote next month? Where are we at in a thought process for this board?
I think we put it on for a vote.
I agree.
We have the last 3 meetings, had discussions and meetings and.
I think the fact that we didn't get any feedback on the live video from last night is very telling. Because I think a year, 2 years ago, if we would have done something like that, we would have had a lot of feedback and it probably wouldn't have been very positive. So I'd like to hear from Matt as to what you think. Does that mean anything? Does it not mean anything?
Can I just clarify for one thing? I just want to be sure that they could comment. Yes. So they were sending you questions via text, but they also had the opportunity live to be commenting. Okay. I don't know Facebook Live very well, so.
What I've heard anecdotally is, since a lot of it is still hypothetical at this point, we haven't been definitive in terms of amount, we haven't been definitive in terms of whether it's April or November. I think for that reason, a lot of people are like, well, it's still conjecture at this point. That might change once the board officially votes to put something. But to this point.
When I like the 244 for safety and more, I have to say, I think that amount is a little bit more than what we had thought about, but it does rhyme.
I would just add that there are other boards making considerations, and because of different patterns in different school districts, that we're likely to be in a region that is going out for bond issues that will be much less than ours. You know, as Mr. Haynes said last night, that, you know, different people have different philosophies, smaller more often. And this will fully fund all the project in our comprehensive master plan, which is a different look at how things, but along, next to other things on the ballot, that could be problematic. Not that those would all be on the same
Right,
ballot, but you understand what I mean.
where you're living at.
Yeah,
You wouldn't even see the other ones.
Okay, so it sounds like we're ready for a vote next
Well,
month.
that was the biggest conversation we've ever had about a bond issue. So you would like for us to bring back to the board next month a vote to put that bond language that we currently have, or if something maybe new and improved, had a suggestion last night, see if we could put a space in there. But bring the bond language back and have the board take a vote during the business meeting.
I'm ready.
I'm ready. Well, that was great.
But I think we've had a lot of conversation about it, so.
A year.
Right?
The comprehensive plan was 50 years.
244.
It's been over a year.
Yeah.
Not 240, 244. 44.
Okay. All right, do you need anything else from us on that topic?
I do not.
All right, next on our workshop, we have our academic report. Dr. Hoban?
Yes, thank you. First, I would like to point out it is November, and I am able to give you an I still have to point out, you'll see this, it's not entirely full of all of the information we would like to have. Still waiting on science information, but really the bulk of it is here, and excited to present it to you here in November. Just to go through some of the background that you've normally seen, there's been some changes this year, but underneath all of that, there really hasn't been any changes. The things that are measured on the state APR are still the same, still the academic achievement, subgroup achievement, college and career readiness, attendance and graduation, that hasn't changed. On our level, the internal things that we check hasn't changed either as far as achievement, behavior, attendance, and climate. However, this year we did ask buildings to start adding a strategic plan focus area to their improvement plans. So that is one difference that will only grow as the strategic plan continues to take form. Background this year, this is just normal background you see on MSIP and APR. They look at categories of target, on track, approaching, and floor for the different categories. This is where I really want to spend a few minutes. So I have previewed for you that the APR would look different this year. You're used to, in past years, hearing what percentage of points we scored. And if you recall, last year we were celebrating that we had scored 100% of the points available. This year, DESE has made the change to go away from percentages. So you're not going to hear a percentage of points as our official APR report. Instead, the focus is intended to be on the actual data involved. When you start to go to points, it's easy to lose focus on the underlying data and what it means to you. And I'll highlight a couple of things here. But as we look at this grid, the first thing I'd like to focus you on is the middle column. So on each measurement, you see 3 columns there, 3 different sets of bar graphs. The middle column is actually what we would call our status column. So that's actually where did our score land relative to the targets. And so that very top one is our English Language Arts score. You can see in the middle there, it's in the blue. And a couple of things, it's a little hard to see on the big screen there, but you see that it says 391.2, and that number lands us in the blue. So what that means is anything in the blue means we have met the target that DESE sets for us. So in the old language, that would have been full points for meeting the status. And so very excited when you see anything in the blue. The next thing I'm going to do is, well, also within that, you see the little triangle that's underneath that bar graph? That's the state average. So you can see how far above the state average we are when you look at these different bars. It's not even something we really compare ourselves to when we look at the data. We're not expecting to be at the state average on academic measures. But again, being in the blue means we have exceeded the state target, so we're extremely excited to talk about that. And you'll see more on that in a few minutes. Then I'll focus your attention on the right-hand bar. The right-hand set of bar graphs is all about progress. So that compares scores over the course of years. So how do we look each year compared to previous years? And that, the one thing to focus on is the higher your status is, the harder it is to show progress. So if you're scoring at extremely high levels, mathematically at some point it's really impossible to keep showing progress on top of that year after year. So typically in the past, if we met status, we wouldn't even really look at progress because in theory we've gotten all our points in the old way. And then the last thing to talk about is the left-hand set of bar graphs, and those are our growth measurements, which actually looks at individual kids. So that is a whole complicated mathematical formula that attempts to take each kid and set a predicted score, and then track each kid against how they perform relative to that prediction. And so it is possible to have high status and still high growth. And so we do want to keep an eye on that. One of the things I talked about earlier is that under the old model, if you had high status, you really maybe didn't even look at growth. And so full points was a way to kind of mask, maybe we've got some growth concerns we should be looking at. So this is really overall a much better report. It keeps our focus on the data, on the scores, and helps us assess where are we doing well and where do we still have some work to do. So that's a quick summary of what all of this means. And so now I'll just quickly go through each of these bars. So that was ELA, you can see it was in the blue. Get down to the second row is math. It's also in the blue, 379.9, again far above the state average. And you can see in both categories, even our growth on that left-hand bar graph was outstanding. As we go down to the next set of bar graphs, that is subgroup achievement. In both cases there, we show up in the green. So the green is considered on track. And on track is not a negative measurement. That means as that state target kept moving up and up, you want to make sure that you are at least on the right path towards eventually hitting those targets, and that's really what on track means. So it's not a negative rating, but we have not met the target like we did in our overall ELA and math. So both of these are in the green. Again, you can see well above the state average. And for ELA, not only are we on track, but our growth for individual students is also on track. So again, in past language, that would have been talking about full points. We are, on the right track there. When you look at math, scored in the green, if you look over on the right-hand side, our progress was all the way up in the blue. So in the past, we would have said between our status and that blue progress, we would have had full points, and we might not have talked anymore about it. This year, we actually look over at the growth, and we see that's actually at the floor. So we do have some concerns there, and that causes us to look deeper at what are we doing with our subgroup achievement when it comes to individual student growth in math. So this report is really more comprehensive as far as the kinds of information it tells us as we analyze it. So that is the academic achievement and subgroup achievement part of the APR. I'll go quicker through these others. When we get into college and career readiness, there's only two. We have our status and we have our progress. You can see again on all measurements, our status is in the blue. We've exceeded the target, exceeded the state averages, and we're in great shape with all of those. And when we go to the last page, which talks about attendance and then graduation rate, again, every single measurement is in the blue. So we have met the status target set by DESE in every single measurement there. Again, we've exceeded the state averages in most cases pretty significantly. So lots of celebrations throughout this data. And it really will take a little more shape here as I start to show you some comparisons around our area and our benchmark districts. This is just a table here that shows you the same things with the words there a little more clear to see, but you can see again, anytime we're meeting target on status. The last piece that starts to be highlighted here is science, still says TBD. Science, we're still waiting on. We anticipate it to look very good. That's our preliminary understanding. We just don't actually have the final results yet. Social studies was a field test this year, and so we will not get social studies scores at any point, and they will not be factored into this in any way. Science is delayed, much like last year, math and English were delayed because they had to set new cut scores. That's the process happening in science right now. We don't anticipate it being February, David, a couple of weeks maybe?
November 23rd.
November 23rd, as we should hear it. We'll update you when we have that in the future. Subgroup achievement, again, this just puts the same information into a table showing that we were on track. And then talks about our progress and growth. In all cases, that MPI score has gone up. So everywhere you look in here, our MPIs are higher than they were, which means our overall average scores have absolutely gone up. Percent of students scoring proficient or advanced, you can see, if you look at this chart over a 5-year trend, you can see in 2018 there was a dip in both ELA and math. That's when they reset new cut scores from the new test. So across the state, you saw a dip in the percentage of students considered proficient or advanced. However, looking at the state's targets and all of that, we still scored very well on the APR, but that was a predictable drop when they set new cut scores, and happy to see that we've bounced back, moving up from that baseline that was set last year. This chart is probably my favorite one in this. If you look at, it's also Mary's favorite. If the highlighted yellow boxes show which of the standards we met the target on, and it also compares us with our benchmarks. So if you look on the left-hand side where we met the target in both ELA and math, if you look at Parkway, Rockwood, everyone in our county, Pattonville, no one else was able to do that in both of those areas. In fact, Parkway and Rockwood only did an ELA, no one else met the target in any of them. So to show that we did it in both is outstanding. If you see where we failed to meet the target in subgroup, where we were still on track, no one else met that target either. So it's certainly a challenge for all districts. And if you look at the right-hand table, you see lots of yellow boxes for everyone. Again, happy to report that we met those targets as well. So one of the things we celebrated last year was, yes, we had 100% APR, and so did some other districts, but we knew that we had met more of them without relying on the progress and the growth. We knew that we had met them just by hitting the standards. And so this really highlights that again this year. We can look at this lots of different ways. If we take every score, of every kid and combine it into one single MPI score, this is also a great chart to look at. Not only are we scoring very well, but looking at all of our benchmark districts, we're at the top, and really quite significantly at the top. So that's also, yes, that can be a favorite chart for you if you like as well. That's Matt's favorite chart. Continuing just some different comparisons, if we look at just ELA. So those were overall MPI scores. If we look at just ELA, again, also at the top. And that's both in all students and in the super subgroup. Switch over to math, again, tops among our benchmarks in both all students and in the super subgroup. Science, we left this up here just to remind you that will be coming. We don't have it yet. Social studies, just to show you it will not come this year. So just those reminders as they come up. Some different ways. This now starts to look at individual tests. So ELA, we've got our overall, which we already said was at the top. But even if we look across 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade MAP tests, 6th grade, 7th grade up to English 2, we are still at the top in almost every single individual test as well, and where we're not, we're very close. We're just under Fort Zumwalt on English 2, but again, however you break it down, you're seeing that we're scoring very well in regards to our benchmark districts. Look at math, same story, 3rd grade on up through Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, at the top or close to it in every single one of these, and not just whether or not we're at the top, but when you're approaching an overall score of 400, that just starts to say that means our average kid is almost proficient, which is an outstanding measurement to look at. And again, without science and social studies. College and career readiness, you saw these on those charts at the beginning. They were all in the blue category, all above state average, all in great shape. So now we move on to some a little bit different measurements. We look at ACT composite score. Happy to report this year that our average ACT is up 0.5 point from last year, and that is a huge jump, especially when you look across the volume of students we're talking about. So the state went up as well, and probably mostly because of our scores, I assume. But certainly happy.
That's fantastic.
Now he gets to drop the mic.
Yeah. But that's also excited to report that. This is one place where we do see some growth opportunities. As much as we're happy about our ACT composite, you can see within our benchmark, there's a couple of districts still outperforming that and scoring more of their kids on the ACT. So definitely we have some work to do there. I'll speak more to some strategies later, but we do have an action team through the strategic plan whose entire charge will be to look at how to raise ACT scores and to find some best practices, not just around our region, but around the country. Graduates accessing advanced placement courses, you can see there, this has been a focus for a lot of years, even another slight increase over an already, a number that was already pretty strong. When we start to look at the number of kids enrolled in classes and the number of kids taking tests, those have also continued to go up. This is a many-year trend of that happening. Spoiler alert, this year we do believe those numbers will be down a little bit, but we've got some strategic plan work as well on looking at how we can have more kids access college level work, whether it's AP or other forms of college level work. You've heard about early college and some other things we're working on. The percentage of students and exam scoring at a passing score, this is a relatively level number. The impressive thing about this is when you're pulling more and more kids into AP classes, you continue to challenge kids that traditionally haven't taken them, and to still have these tests passed at a very similar rate shows great success. The more kids we get in there, you would typically expect those passing rates to go down a little bit, but they have not. When we look at post-secondary placement, relatively steady, a slight dip in the number of kids going to college and a slight increase in those who are going straight to employment, but overall really pretty similar, pretty steady numbers. Attendance has been great. Again, met the target. You saw that on those earlier charts. An increase from a year earlier and in really good shape there. Graduation has always been a strong point, continues to be a great measurement for us. So as we talk about our strengths and celebrations, top 4% of districts in the state by that single MPI, again, we just can really, no matter what measurement we look at, we're finding ourselves very competitive across our region and the state. Absolutely a celebration is all of our MAP and ELC scores. Again, I left social studies up there just as a reminder. We're not going to have that this year, but in future reports, those will start to show back up. Advanced placement, very happy with our continued strong enrollment, kids taking the test, kids passing tests. Graduation rate, as always, is a celebration. Opportunities for growth, as much as we celebrate our AP, we also have opportunity for growth there. There continue to be kids that, if we know that 80% of our kids right now are going off to college, we'd like to see closer to that number attempting some college coursework while they're with us, because that's a huge predictor for college success. What I've added up there is not just AP, but college coursework. We're also looking for more ways to have kids access college level coursework in addition to AP. ACT, as we talked about in that chart, we know we have some benchmark districts doing some outstanding work there, and we're going to continue working through strategic plan avenues to find some best practices there. Attendance, even when it's strong, we're always looking to work more on our attendance. Subgroup achievement, as you saw, the only two bars we had that weren't where we met the targets. And career readiness, we know that our college reports are very strong. We have some work to do with our career readiness. And so when we talk about strategies, these really all speak to those different areas. We really focus with our principals on those building school improvement plans on many of these areas. Subgroup achievement has to take a little more focus because we know that's an area we still need to see some movement. When we talk about AP courses, there's teacher support, there's student support. If we're going to challenge more kids to take those courses, we need to be ready to support them. ACT, whether it's practice, test taking, other avenues to get kids access to improvement on that ACT is again some work we're undertaking. Another thing is the right test for all students. The ACT maybe isn't the right test for all students, so looking at ASVAB and work keys as viable options for some of our kids. And the college and career readiness standards that come through ACT is something we're certainly keeping an eye on. Strategic plan action work really highlights a lot of the efforts here. Some of that will take a little while. They're in the research phase, working at gathering information from around the country, and then we'll start to look at what best practices we can put in place here. The second to last bullet is about a group called All Here. They're an attendance group based out of Harvard Research that is going to come in actually next week to meet with our principals and talk about how to help principals identify root causes of attendance. And that goes hand in hand with the last bullet when we talk about chronic attendance concerns for individual students. When your numbers are strong, it's going to be hard to improve overall, but we really are looking at those individual kids with chronic attendance and how can we support them. And so this group that's going to come in, the idea is to help us use research-based strategies as opposed to just trying things that seem like we should try them. So the idea would be really focus our efforts on how to help those kids with chronic attendance issues. So those are the strategies we're working on. Lots to digest. Any questions I can answer for you?
What place were we again?
Weird.
I have one.
I have
On the one, oh, I'm sorry. On the one slide where you talk, it's like up a little bit, I think it's on 26 or 27, under graduation, the status, it says target, but the progress was floor. Is that, because we've never checked that before, our progress, we need to see what it's like next year?
No, so progress is a measure of how that number changes from cycle to cycle. And so if you're already really high, you just really can't raise it.
Okay.
And so it's expected at times, the higher your target is, the higher your status, the harder it is to show any progress at all. Okay. If we were if our graduation rate was 91%, I would sure hope I was here talking about a high progress number, because we would need to be getting it up. But when you're at 97%, it's hard to show any progress there.
Okay, thank you.
Nathan, for the board and the audience, could you describe, you said super subgroup, you said subgroup, what is that
Sure.
group?
So super subgroup, the state combines, and here's where it's going to get a little complicated for future conversations, but the state combines students with IEP, minority students, free and reduced lunch students, and all of those groups come into one subgroup, so that in the past, it used to be a student could be on an IEP, and that score would count in the IEP subgroup. And then there might be a free and reduced lunch subgroup. Well, sometimes you had a student that belonged to all of those subgroups.
Correct.
So now that student score counts one time in the super subgroup, as opposed to separately in a bunch of individual places. And so they've all been combined. The thing that's going to complicate that is the Every Student Succeeds Act, the federal act that the state is starting to have to comply with, is going to force us to look back at now individual subgroups. So right now we're still accountable to the super subgroup at the state APR level, but what we talked about last year with targeted schools and some of the other things coming are going to focus more on individual subgroups. So strategically, we're going to work with buildings to still break out their data by individual subgroups, look at how our students with IEPs are doing, how our students on free and reduced lunch are doing, how our minority students are performing, knowing that if we make improvements there, it will cause our super subgroup to show improvement as well.
And RRESOL, is that the right term now?
Mm-hmm.
Still exempt the first year
Yes.
on ELA?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First year in the country, I'm sorry. Not
Thank you.
Francis House, but in the country.
Board?
I just have a question. So you spoke to a group that I was at a couple weeks ago, and all of the superintendents and deputy superintendents got up and shared that they had gotten 100% of the points. So how can we, as lay people that aren't necessarily able to do the educational speak, how are we able to share that we're actually better?
Sure.
We got more 100.
Right. So
I mean, if everybody got 100.
Right.
Better than your 100.
And so I've been very intentional in avoiding the talk about, could I say we would have got 100% if they still did it the way? The answer is yes. But I feel like that really masks, there's plenty of schools that got 100% but had to really rely on growth and progress to get there. And that's where we're very much separated. We only had 2 areas where we would have had to rely on growth or progress to get our points if they were still doing them. So to me, the real separator between us and the other districts is how many of the targets we hit without having to rely on growth and progress to show that. So just our straight up achievement results are much stronger than the districts we compare ourselves with.
I think it's a difficult question to answer with the specific data that Dr. Hoban has presented tonight because it's complex. I'll also say the state has purposely moved away from the 100% of points because they want districts to focus on what he's describing, which is where are we not on target and who do we need to move. And so they have purposely not come out with a report that shows the percentage points earned because they want the focus to be on, are you hitting the target, and if not, is it because you're not making progress with a group of kids or progress with individual kids? So it's been a deliberate decision on the State Department's part not to provide points, and the old that you might have seen in the Post-Dispatch was not available this year. So I think we have a lot of other points of pride, some of which I've shared last night. So I think there would be other talking points if you're looking to help sell the benefits of living in the Francis Hill School District.
And the easy answer really is our scores are higher.
Thank you. That was what I was looking for, something easy.
On all of those APIs where we showed you we're at the top of the list, those were higher scores than our benchmark districts. And so They might have gotten, say, full points, and so did we, but our scores were higher. So from those comparison standpoints, absolutely.
Thank you.
Board, any other questions? I have a comment. So this information is one of the reasons why I'm so proud of Francis Howell. And to help our students make this level of achievement, it's not only about them and their successes, it's really about the whole district and the community. It takes the administration, it takes the teachers, it takes the paras, the support staff, the custodians, the maintenance, the facilities. It takes everyone in our district to help our students achieve at this level. So it's something that I think we all should be very proud of. So thanks for bringing the information forward.
Absolutely. And before I wrap up, I do want to highlight David Brothers does an awful lot of work to get this presentation put together, and a lot of work from all people. And Zach Brady, who's not here, gets kudos lots of times. This is another one of those times as well. So I just want to make sure that those two get a lot of credit for what you saw tonight.
Great, thank you. Board, anything else on that topic? Okay. Third topic for work session tonight is our 2020-2021 school calendar. Mrs. Simpkins?
Yes, I am very excited to present round 2 of the 2020-21 calendar. We have new legislation that was brought to us July 11th that said we could not start school prior to August 24th, and our previous calendar had us starting on school on August 10th. So there is no better way to engage the community than to talk about the school calendar. So we invited our community to come and our staff to come be a part of a calendar committee. We had over 180 volunteers to be a part of the calendar committee, and would really just like to thank the 29 people listed on the slide here. You can see we had great representation from our teachers, our parents, our FISPA representatives, and we also had student voice. Had some high school students that attended as well. And so we spent a couple of nights together just hashing over the calendar, and I would say that a lot of compromises were made throughout the course of creating the draft calendar today. You are probably familiar with the calendar parameters. Every year we send out kind of a list of some of the things that drive the decisions around making the calendar. And we did send those out in a pre-survey before the committee got together this year because we knew that we were going to have to be more flexible with the parameters, and we're going to have to give and take on some things. So we did send out a pre-survey asking our community what was most important to them. And of that, we had 2,436 folks respond to that survey. Almost 70% of them were parents, identified as parents. So it was a good representation of our community. And what they prioritized as we looked at a new calendar was to include a spring and fall break. Lots and lots of comments about how fall break has really become part of our culture. And there was a lot of fear that in this new calendar, with a change in the start date, that fall break would be removed. So that was one of the charges of the committee, was to look for a way that we could continue to include fall break in our culture. So we have some highlights here that I can share with you. Our start dates, our returning teachers will not return until August 17th, and our first day of school will be August 24th. And we know that a shorter week to start is ideal, and we did have some compromise there. We will start on a Monday. And that really was the start date at our previous approved calendar as well. We were always going to start on a Monday. It just didn't work even in the first draft of the calendar. We do have fall break included, and one of the goals of the committee was to look for ways to eliminate some of the intermittent days off. And so you will see fall break in this calendar is tied to a PD day and an election day. We did not want students to be out for 5 days for fall break, come back on a Monday, and then have Tuesday off for an election day. So a big thank you to the DPDC group who worked with us on how we could best align the PD. It's a little nerve-wracking for them to have 2 PD days next to each other. A lot of work goes into that, but we appreciate their compromise so that we didn't have that issue. The election days are still non-student days. We did have a lot of conversation around those days. But we know that parking, safety, and security of our buildings when we have folks coming in on those election days was important. Christmas break is of course included in the calendar. It was reduced. We took 2 days from that original break, so we will have students on Monday and Tuesday. Ultimately, we were looking for 10 days in that calendar to have students come to school. And so those were 2 days that we were able to find within the calendar as well. I will point out spring break was placed a little bit different on this calendar. We worked with our benchmark districts, and the superintendents and those folks that work with the calendar had all agreed as we started to put out the calendar that spring break would be the 4th week in March, so that we could have a consistent break. That was so that with some of our countywide programs, students would have the same break when you think of like CAPS and the Lewis and Clark program, as well as families that have maybe work in one district, have students that go to another, or maybe married couples, that they could have that same break together. So that was changed. And you will notice on the calendar that we did switch our work day to our off day to the Monday after Easter. We have typically had Good Friday as a day off. But again, we were really worried about that intermittent break, so we didn't want to have students taking Friday off, coming back to school and work on Monday, and then having that election day off. So we had some conversation about moving that paid holiday with our groups to either the Monday after Easter or really any other day that we could put into the calendar. We could move that day to some other day in the calendar. But again, just looking for ways to stop that intermittent time off. So we'll go to the next slide here. Overall, so we did send out our normal survey at the end of the calendar, and we had several respondents. Over 88% of staff and 80% of the community were either satisfied, very satisfied, or had neutral feelings about the calendar. So overall, just happy that spring break and fall break were included, and not a significant amount of comments on any one area. The most comments that we saw fell into fall break, Christmas break, and the end of first semester. And the end of first semester does end in January, which is very different for us. We tried to end first semester in the past before Christmas break, and that just didn't happen because we were trying to keep those semesters and those quarters even. That was a big goal for our committee. And so our students really had a lot of conversation and compromise. They were feeling like fall break would help us in pushing back those finals. Students will come back in January, have a week to kind of get back into the swing of things, study a little bit, and finals won't be until January 14th or 15th. Once they heard that, they were a little more comfortable with the end of that first semester being in January. They were a little nervous about coming right back from break and taking finals, so appreciate their compromise there. And then as far as staff, we had some comments about fall break, the start of school, and snow days. Nothing significant that changed the calendar from the original draft of the committee. Fall break comments, they don't change. It's 50-50. Some people love it and ask for it to be longer, and other people don't care for it and ask that we remove it. So you can see that kind of evident in the survey that we have. Typically at this time, I would also be bringing to you the 2021 and 2022 calendar. Within our committee, we had lots of conversation about that. We did create that calendar, and in that calendar, we do revert back to having Good Friday as the paid holiday. We don't have that same issue in that calendar as we do this year with the election day. So it's very similar to the calendar that we are presenting to you tonight. But there was discussion about some potential legislative changes that could still occur, whether the start date would be reverted back, that law would be changed, or maybe even that there would be new legislation about an end date. And so we didn't want to publish a calendar and then have to go back and change it. So our compromise with the committee was let's wait and have the session end. And if there are no changes, we will bring that calendar to you in June. So we can still release that and get it out a little bit earlier to our community. With that, I'll answer any questions that you have.
Board, any questions on the calendar? Mrs. Walker.
parent-teacher conferences on the first day of fall and spring break?
That is a placeholder day. So that doesn't mean that the conferences will be held on that day. The buildings will schedule those conference days at their leisure, whatever's best for their staff and their communities, but they're usually in the evening. So we just have to show a work day on the calendar, so it's just a placeholder day. So if a staff member were to miss the parent-teacher conferences in the evening, let's say they're scheduled on a Tuesday and Thursday, then we use that placeholder day to account for the personal day or sick day, because we can't have a sick day for the work day plus the evening, if that makes sense. So it's just a placeholder day. That's how it's always been held on the calendar. There's no change in when they'll hold those parent-teacher conferences.
All right, and then my next question is about fall break.
Okay.
So I think from the comments I read, it's probably 50-50.
It is,
Okay.
always.
And so what is the educational benefit to our kids to have a fall break versus have finals before Christmas break?
I would say that even with, if we took fall break out of the calendar, there's still a good possibility that finals would still be in January after Christmas break. They would be even closer to us returning. So it only gives us about 5 days because of all the other days that we have within that first semester, like PD days and other days that we have off. I think that as we approach fall break, we hear from our staff and from our students that that break is needed after first quarter. Whether it's the stress or the anxiety or just their schedule, they get a little bit of a breather. I think we see some discipline calm down as we've taken a break from each other. I thought it was interesting in one of my HR meetings, Pattonville was actually studying their discipline data and going to advocate to add fall break because they see that spike in discipline, and they thought if we can include a fall break like Francis Howell and kind of give everyone some breathing room, we might see a reduction in some of that discipline. And I would say that's true for staff too. That, you know, we start to see some squirrely things, and we just hope to get to fall breaks. Everybody gets a little bit of a breather and comes back refreshed and rested and able to kind of focus on what they're working on. So
I would just add that as we looked at all the puzzle pieces in regards to the calendar, that even if you took away fall break, it was going to be very difficult, bordering on impossible to get the semester in. There would be many days that outside of fall break that we would have to go. Districts who looked at completing their semester before the holidays had very few days and had everything pushed to the second semester.
And I would say it's also a recruiting tool. Not many districts have fall break. So when you talk about having that fall break after that first quarter, that excites some people. It's a retention tool. I hear folks say, I'm not leaving Francis Howell because if I go somewhere else, there's not going to be a fall break, and I really enjoy that time. I heard a lot of great comments. I tried to pay attention to them about our staff who said, you know, I'm a working mom and I feel guilty about the time that I spend at work, and I got a week to make memories with my kids. I got to go to their preschool and have lunch with them, or I got to actually take them to the doctor's appointment that week. So I think there's some work-life balance that comes into place. When we talk about the social emotional health of our staff, I think it's a tool that we have. We can get to fall break, we can take a breather, we can do some family-like things during that time that helps. It just helps, and people look forward to that. And not every district has that, and I think that's something unique to our culture that has become something that people really appreciate.
So I guess my next question is, how do we think this is going to impact our students' finals? Because we're really only talking about the high school kids for the most part. What are we going to do if we see that those test scores are really dropping because they've had this break and then they've started new content when they come back? So they're going to start new content and then go back and review and then have to take finals.
I would recommend writing your legislator about that. I do think it's difficult. We've been put in a very difficult situation. Right now, we are able to have fall break and end our semesters, and that is best for our kids. This committee has been charged with near impossible, putting all the puzzle pieces together, trying to get our students and our staff a break when they need it, which is fall, and also to look at that smaller group, as you mentioned, of high school students who take that final. I do think, as Lisa worked through pushing the final, they're not coming right back and taking it, which we believe will help, and we've received some positive comments in that regard into, about the ability to come back and have some reviews before we start. And districts have had the semester after the holidays. It wasn't that long ago that we had that here in Francis Hall. So it is going to be a challenge, and it's unfortunate that we have been given the parameters that we've been given.
We got work to do then.
Well, Mary said a lot of what I was going to say, but also that since we've always had this fall break, and obviously we just heard some of the results of it from having it, so it's good to keep it like that.
I have a question to better understand the Easter weekend this year. So in this current calendar, it looks like, and make sure I understand it correctly, that we will be having Student Contact Day on Good Friday. Then we will have an off day on the Monday after Easter.
Correct.
And an off day on the Tuesday after Easter because of the election.
Right, that's a PD day for staff.
Okay, thank you. And then on Wednesday, it's a Student Contact Day.
Correct.
Okay, and that spring break is not associated to that because as a community at large, we are working to the 4th week of March.
Correct. So we had some conversation about those county-wide programs. We had conversation at the superintendent level as well as the HR level of those folks that create the calendar, and that was the agreement moving forward for all of our St. Charles County schools as well as some of our benchmark schools, Rockwood, Parkway. I can't sit here today and tell you that every single one of them are going to follow through with the agreement that they shared with us as we met. In fact, I think that one of them has already changed their mind maybe. But we had lots of conversation with those other leaders and felt like that would be a good thing moving forward. And there were many staff members that were excited about having the same spring break as their kiddos, or like I said, their spouses maybe work in another district.
Okay, but the way that falls this year, it's unrelated to the
It
Easter
is.
holiday. So, okay, I think I understand. I just wanted to make sure I
And we
understood.
didn't make that commitment that it would always be the 4th week of March. That's what we said for this year.
this
We
year.
would have some conversation as a little larger community about where to place that, but just trying to find that common week so that we could provide that benefit to families.
And then you mentioned, I believe, that the 21-22 calendar, which is in more of a draft form at this point.
It is created, the committee created it.
Okay.
It's ready to go. We're just holding it until we make sure that there aren't any legislative changes that would cause
Affect
us to
that.
change it.
Okay.
But it does allow us to have that day off on Good Friday because it's not connected to the election day.
And so the Tuesday following Easter is not election day during that
Right.
year. Okay. All right. Thank you.
One more question. So they said that we have policy stating that we're off on Good Friday, so do we need to suspend that policy, or are you gonna bring that to us, or
We
how's
will.
that work?
If you approve the calendar in December, we will continue to have some conversation with our groups to find a day that we can provide that paid holiday to them. The paid holiday, of course, will not go away. We would not ever take away a paid holiday. But we'll ask them to work with us to find where is the best place to place that paid holiday on their work calendar. Is it the Monday? Is it that Monday? Is it a different day in the calendar that they'd like to see it? That happens when we have, Christmas Day falls on a Saturday or a Sunday. We kind of work to find where we're going to place the holiday within the calendar. So we'll ask for them to work with us and compromise on that so that we can do what's good for our students and not have that intermittent day off.
I just would like to thank Lisa and the committee. This is a very difficult task. It has been very time-consuming. Multiple surveys, many people attempting to make many people happy. The fact that we have it to an 80% approval rating is a success in and of itself. And I know that was not an easy task. I just want to thank you for your work on it, as well as the committee.
Excellent. Okay, board, any other questions around the calendar proposal? So that'll come for vote at our next meeting.
Great.
Okay. All right, next on our agenda is superintendent comments.
Sure. The Francis Hall community was instrumental in the creation of the district strategic plan, and more than 2,500 parents, employees, students, and community members provided input as part of the process. Now, all Francis Hall School District stakeholders are able to monitor the progress of the strategic plan initiatives with the new Invisio Strategy Manager public dashboard. The Invisio link is on the district website and in all district newsletters. Francis Hall has once again been recognized by the Association of School Business Officials International for excellence in budget presentation with the Meritorious Budget Award for the 1920 budget year. This is the 14th consecutive year the district has received this prestigious award. In honor of Veterans Day, on Monday, November 11th, Francis Hall schools participated in a variety of assemblies, activities, and celebrations to recognize veterans and all of our loved ones who have served our country. The bad weather didn't keep our vets in, nor their families. Our communications department has again been recognized by MOSPA, the Missouri School Public Relations Association. This year, the department received 4 awards for writing, an award of merit for video, and the first place award for excellence for the district's social media efforts. Thanks to the 850 plus Francis Hall stakeholders who provided feedback on the first thought exchange about the Francis Hall facilities and a bond issue, the results are available on the district website. Our next thought exchange is a follow-up to the first, asking our community to share their ideas about communicating our pressing facility needs with district stakeholders and help them to understand a no tax increase bond issue. Please visit the thought exchange on the district website to provide your input. Francis Hall School District, in partnership with our food service provider Sodexo, recently unveiled a new app aimed at providing nutritional information for families. So Happy is an easy-to-use menu and nutrition app allowing users to see all ingredients and allergens served in every meal at school. Our transportation department conducted an annual school bus evacuation drills in October. The drills are an important component of bus safety and help to ensure that every student knows what to do in the event of an emergency. The state only requires kindergarten through 6th grade to participate. However, the district goes above and beyond and requires all students to take part in the drill. Lastly, on November 13th, 14 high school students across Francis Hall took a seat in front of family and friends and signed their national letters of intent. These students committed to continuing their academic and athletic careers in college. Thank you.
Exciting stuff around the district. All right, next on our agenda is Board of Education comments and request. Mrs. Walker?
So I've heard we may be having some issues with no-fill and our substitutes that we may need to look at that. So would it be possible to put that on a future agenda to bring us a report so we can see if there's anything that we as a board need to do to help with that?
We would be happy to give you an update on our interventions, our plans, and our current reality. We can do it in a workshop at the next meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
That would be great. Mrs. Lang?
I've been approached by a few individuals in regards to behaviors in our elementary schools. Could we possibly add another workshop next
We
month?
could do the exact same thing, so current reality, the interventions that we
Yes.
have in place and future conversations.
Thank you.
Also at the next workshops, we have 2 workshops in December already, I believe.
Yeah.
But
Staffing.
the vacation station preschool tuition one doesn't typically take a significant amount of time. We'll be talking about staffing, behavior, and subs then. The rest of the agenda looks minimal, so I think we'll be all right.
Thank you.
Be a very Merry Christmas.
Mr. Hain?
Oh, you got that on, okay. I just wanted to point out a few things that were brought up on the thought exchange, just to make sure that everybody knows an official record of this, but there were a couple of things on here about the Jewel lawsuit. Number one is that, people were saying we're using taxpayer dollars. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we're not using 1 single cent of taxpayer dollars for the Jewel lawsuit. That's all being done by the attorneys, and if we win, we win. If we lose, we still win, because it brings awareness to our kids and helps our kids in the long run. Another one of the things that was out there was, if you pass this bond issue and you build a new high school, how are we going to fund all the new teachers? All those teachers will be transferring from the old school to the new school, so we won't have a significant increase in staffing. So that answers that question. One of the other things was on here that the public doesn't trust us because we're going to spend $250,000 to find a new superintendent.
Very difficult to replace.
Even though it may take $250,000 to find a replacement for Mary. We're going to attempt to do that for lesson 5, so I just want that to be a matter of public record. And the other thing is that, well, you know, how will this affect teacher salaries? And it's, once again, it's a bond issue, it can only be used for capital improvements. It can't be used for salaries, benefits, and staffing. So I think those are some points that need to be, you know, brought out and make sure that everybody understands that, number one. And then I just want to reiterate what one of the things that Mary said about Veterans Day. Every year I try to go to 1, 2, or 3 of our school programs, and I don't think there's a district in the state that does a better job of honoring our veterans. And I had an opportunity to walk around the room and talk to many of them, and they were like, you know, I've got grandkids in this district and that district, and you guys really do it well, and thank you very much for allowing our kids to learn about Veterans Day and to honor our veterans. So I just want to make sure that that is said, and that it's one of the best days of the year.
Right. Board, any other comments or suggestions at this time, requests? All right. Let's take a look at our upcoming meetings. So we have our December 19th meeting. If we take a look at the agenda there, I think we just discussed that we're going to be adding in a vote on a potential no tax increase bond issue. I think we also discussed we're going to add into the work session an update on the no-fill and school report. Any other additions or corrections to the December 19th meeting?
Nope.
Okay. Board, if you could take a look at the January 16th meeting. Any additions or corrections at this time?
So I said we didn't have very much on the December. I did not realize that we have the audit on there. So my recommendation would be to move one of the 2 work sessions to January, where it looks like we have a little lighter agenda.
I agree. I was just telling him I think we're gonna need cots for December's meeting.
And I think that's a great idea. Which one, no-fill or the school report? Not the audit.
I say let admin
Yeah,
decide.
admin.
I mean, let
know,
you guys
it's more
decide what you
relevant.
think is.
I think we're more, more relevant would be behavior, but I think we're more prepared to present on the subs for December, and that we could provide a more comprehensive report on. We have some meetings coming up in regards to behavior.
And I would add, if we move behavior to January, it allows us to look at a full semester comparison to previous years for our current reality.
And we'll have some things, we already started some work on the no-fills and have some strategies that we'll include in the staffing plans, so that'll all kind of fit together when it comes to what, yeah.
Okay. You okay with that?
Sorry, Mary.
It's fine.
We
Okay,
could always
so
have a special December meeting.
We're good.
No, we have a few in December already.
okay, so we'll keep the no-fill update on the December meeting and move the behavior school report to the January meeting. Good, okay.
Okay.
Any other adjustments to the January meeting? Okay. Board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Elaine. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Eh.
Motion carries.
That doesn't mean anything, right?